You're listening to the Josh Parnell Leadership Podcast. We all have leadership within us, and once we understand how to challenge perceived limitations, we're able to influence those we're leading. Josh is a leadership coach, trainer, and speaker. He's also a veteran of the United States Air Force with over 20 years of leadership experience. Are you ready to transform your leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results? Let's get ready for liftoff. It's time to go from great to greater. Here's Josh in today's episode.
Welcome to the Josh Parnell Leadership Podcast. Once again, we're joined by another fantastic guest. I'm joined today by the Vice President of Communications at White Pickett team. He's a consultant and speaker. He's a husband and father and a future author. I'm joined today by Ben Gonzalez. Ben, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, glad you're here. I'm glad that the audience gets to hear all about you and what you do and how you do it. Before we jump into that, though, go ahead and tell us who Ben Gonzalez is. Give us all the deets about Mr. Gonzalez.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate it. Well, firstly, we've gotten to know each other a little bit over the past month or so, and you've gotten to be on our podcast, and we've really enjoyed the conversation. So I'm really looking forward to wherever this one goes today. I have a lot of things in common. But myself, firstly, I hate talking about myself. That is not my MO. It's not generally what I like to focus on. I really prefer to focus on other people, and maybe that says everything you need to know about me. But generally speaking, so I have been in the home services industry for about a decade now. It has been in through various roles. I started in construction. I was a laborer, so to speak, and I worked with my hands. And now I still work with my hands, but I type, and it's a lot more boring. But I do get to spend a lot of time connecting with people, and at the heart of myself and what I get to do and what brings me a lot of joy is connecting with people and helping those home service business owners, these entrepreneurs, elevate their game. So when it comes to just being a better leader within their business, and in addition to that, being a better manager, because I think those are two very different things.
Sure.
Being a sounding board, being a person that can provide some guiding principles to help them elevate their game. That's what I love doing. It's what I get to do. We have several companies that we serve at White Pickett team. We're always looking to onboard more, but we're also pretty picky with who we spend a lot of our time with, and that's intentional. More so than anything, I just really want to work with people that are serious about elevating their game and serious about their business and serious about leading other people. I find that those individuals tend to be the most fulfilling to work with, as opposed to someone who's kind of half in, half out. So anyways, yeah, man, I think that there's a lot of value to be given from anyone, and it's easy to limit yourself. And so my part of my message is to push past the fear and push past the hard times, and know that regardless of your background, your circumstances, you have value to add in wherever you deem is important to you. And if I can help other people reach that level, it's all what I'm all about.
Well, I know a lot of our audience members are people who want to elevate their game. They want to improve. They want to focus on their growth and development, and that's why they're listening in. So, of course, this is a leadership podcast. I am going to ask you to share. You mentioned that there is a difference between leadership and management. So, Ben, if I could, I would ask that you share what is your definition of leadership and what is the difference between leadership and management?
Yeah. So leadership, I've always defined it as the ability for someone to inspire a group of people to come together and accomplish something. And so I think that can be taken in multiple facets of if you're leading a team within a business, or you're leading a group of volunteers, or you're a parent. I think that there's does not matter your title. It doesn't matter your circumstance. You can be a leader, and there's different levels to the game. But you have can have the ability to be proficient in inspiring a group of people to take action on something to achieve it, with the intent that it's adding value to other people. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. Management is holding people accountable to that. And so I think more so than anything, it's within a business. The management of people is casting a vision on, this is the impact we're trying to have, and here's the goals and the steps in order for us to achieve that, to gain something from it, and generally in a monetary sense or beyond that. But holding people accountable to that. And so I think that there's a traditional carrot and stick, which I think has value to it. I don't know that it's necessarily the only direction I would take things, but and then outside of that, you have just different ways to incentivize. But more than anything, management is holding people accountable to the task at hand to accomplish the goal.
So the key word with management is accountability. One of the things that I'm curious, you mentioned earlier about how you help people push past fears. For a lot of folks, we struggle to get inspired to take action. And the reason we're not taking action is because there's something rooted, there's a fear rooted deep down. You mentioned taking action is part of leadership. My question to you, Ben, is how do you push past the fears to actually take the action to begin with?
Yeah. You mentioned something a second ago. You said that a lot of fears are deep-seated. They're rooted really deep. And I think it takes a lot of humility to recognize that you have fears. And when you don't, that's when you get ego plays a role. And when you have that voice be super loud, I think ego or insecurity, that can really, when you let that voice become so loud, it can be super difficult to push past any beyond any barriers that you have set in front of you. And so what I was trying to say is that it takes a lot of humility to recognize your current state. But there's Tim Ferriss has talked about this, the fear setting. And so it's like, it's your ability to play through those fears. So if, let's say you're trying to, you're a business owner and you have 2 people on staff and you have the funds to hire 2 more people, and you know that this is the right time and it's going to add value to the business, but you're afraid that you're not capable of managing those 2 extra people coming on board. Well, let's play through that scenario. You firstly know that adding 2 more people to take action in the business and achieve objectives is going to add value to the business. And maybe it's your fear of not being able to hold people accountable. Okay, well, let's say that you bring these 2 people in and you give them a structure and an objective to go and hit, and they don't hit it. What's your action when you get to that point? Well, you've got a couple of options. You can let them run right over you, which is where I think a lot of people think that might happen. Or you can correct them. And if you correct them, does it work? Does it not work? Let's say it works. Great. Let's move on. Let's say it doesn't work. Okay, well, then you need to take action and probably let that person go. If they've, you've gotten some time in, you've gotten spent time training them, and they're not cutting it, you need to let them go. There's the fear that they're going to be rejected. Well, what happens if they reject you? Probably not a whole lot's going to happen. You're just going to keep moving on, right? And so that's something that I like to talk to the people that we consult with, is just to play out the fears, because more often than not, you just get stuck on this one thing, and without processing through that, it can be difficult to push past that. Mm-hmm. And so we try to work through what those fears are. And I think what you come to find is it's probably impractical, the things that you're afraid of. Yeah. So once you play through it, I think it's a lot easier to recognize that pushing past the fear is the right option, and to be default aggressive. Jocko Willing says that, be default aggressive, and I think that there's a lot of value in that mindset to have.
Yeah, so Ben, I think I'm going to butcher this stat, but I think I heard the other day about how at least 80% of the thoughts that we're having, that we're worrying about, worrying about a hypothetical situation that hasn't occurred yet, most of the time these things don't even occur. And so being able to navigate through any kind of challenge, you mentioned you're doing it with the fear. Like I like to say you're doing it scared. It doesn't that you're not operating in faith. We know that the similarity between faith and fear is that they both believe in a future that hasn't happened yet. So you can still do it scared, but at the same time, recognize you are in the seat that you're in for a reason, and you can't let the size of your current seat dictate the significance of your impact. You're making an impact. You have the opportunity, capture the opportunity, and operate with confidence. Let me ask you this. I'm kind of rabbit trailing, but how do you operate in a place of confidence and at knowing that what you're trying to achieve, you're going to get there. You're going to have to go through all these. You're going to have to navigate some thought hurdles, if you will. But how do you beat that imposter syndrome and move in faith with confidence?
Yes. I think that let me rephrase what I'm saying that. I totally understand the imposter syndrome. That is something that I regularly struggle with. And I think it really helps when you start to deviate or change your perspective and stop putting so much attention on am I or am I not performing, and be focused more so on this mantra of sometimes the direction is more important than the destination. Like maybe just in this season right now, knowing that you're on the path is the biggest thing that you should be focusing on, not necessarily that thing that you want to achieve. And I know that's not always helpful for people who are very, very goal-oriented. But I think that if you can shift the focus a little bit and just focus on what is the next best thing that I can do right now, as opposed to I'm not doing enough right now. And I think that perspective shift can be helpful to people, but it's more than anything, in my opinion, I think it's kind of more of a short-term solution and not necessarily the long-term perspective to have. I think the long-term perspective to have is just how can you outlast everyone around you in a healthy way, not trying to like dog on other people or like put other people down, but having the perspective that you're playing the long game here. And you're not always going to get everything right. And there are absolutely peaks and valleys that you're going to go through in your career. But just know that maybe in this short-term season where you're really dealing with not having a lot of confidence in yourself and what you're doing, just focus on doing the next best thing that moment, that day, and know that the direction you're going in is right now the most important thing to focus on, as opposed to the destination, that end-all be-all.
That's so good, Ben. And I think along the way, we can identify the wins that we're getting, and we have to make sure that we're celebrating those wins, because we can see, hey, I may not be making the progress at the rate or the speed in which I'm trying to make the progress, but even slow progress is still progress. And celebrate the wins, and remember, to your point, hey, how can I outlast the competition, if you will? I mean, it's the people who are successful in anything they do are the ones who didn't quit. They didn't give up. They kept on going. They kept on going. They kept on growing. I love the phrase that you shared. Sometimes the direction is more important than the destination. I believe that as a leadership coach, something I share with my clients is how I want to be able to create safety and trust so that I can provide clarity and direction. I think the two things that any person deserves in any relationship, especially professionally, is clarity and direction. Yeah. My question to you, Ben, is how do you provide clarity and direction for your team members so that they're not necessarily focused on the destination, but rather, hey, let's look at clarity and direction right now. It's the direction that we're going in and the clarity in which you're doing it. How do you focus your team members on that?
Yeah, so there's two things I'll focus on with, or I'll take with what you just said. When it comes to direction, I think it's really important to know that one, that there's a very clear outline of like what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and making it, this is kind of controversial. I think there's, making it really sandbagging the goal, or making it super, a BHAG goal. And then there's like just that it's barely attainable, but it's attainable. I think that kind of level is what most people should be shooting for when you're dealing with the team, is what's really going to stretch them and push them, but it's accomplishable. You might have to put in extra time or effort, or just be more focused on increasing your output. But I think having something that's pretty big and hard to achieve is something to focus on. But I think it's helpful when you're communicating what that goal is, to know that you're doing something that is going to benefit more than just you and your team. So I'll give an example of that. Right now, we're building the Pet Waste Millionaire brand at Pickett team. So the Pet Waste Millionaire is E.J. McCoy, who's the co-founder of Scoop Soldiers and Shoreby and like half a dozen other businesses. And the whole messaging behind the Pet Waste Millionaire brand is to show people that the American dream is still alive. It's still alive and well and thriving. And it is attainable, and people can become wealthy through simple businesses like scooping dog poop. EJ and his business partner were able to do that. And so we want to build the brand and get that messaging out as much as we can. And so when I talk to my team about all of the dang things that we've got to do to get to that point, and it's such a grind because it's such a niche industry. And so, but when I talk to them about it, I just tell them that the reality of what we're doing here is so much beyond just a subscriber count. It's so much beyond, getting a paid sponsorship to something. Like what we're doing here is we have the chance to impact globally by changing mindsets in a positive way. And you are a part of that. The time that you take, the 45 to 55 hours a week that you spend on your area of expertise, it can be a grind, but just know that when we get closer and actually hit our goal, we're impacting lives. It's bigger than just ourselves. Now, I get that that's not as easy to do when you're talking about, if you own a small business where you're, mowing lawns. Sometimes it can be hard to cast a vision like that, but I still think there's a way in your ability as a leader to communicate the impact that you're going to have when your team accomplishes that goal. So that's the direction when I think about, that's the level of communication that I want to provide to my team. But then when it comes to clarity, you've got to have steps to get to that point. You've got to have milestones to achieve that are significantly easier to accomplish. So again, we're talking about the Pet Waste Millionaire brand. We want to have we want to be impacting and reaching millions of people in and outside of the home services industry. Okay, well, in order for us to do that, that means we've got to get views. It means we've got to get people actually watching our content. And then it means we've got to get them to engage. And so we've got metrics that we're trying to accomplish within a specific period of time. And so that's the kind of clarity that I want to bring to them, is when you hit these milestones, we're on our way to hitting the overall goal. And that overall goal is so much bigger than you and me right now.
So good. So good. You mentioned goals earlier about sandbagging some goals, but also the lofty goals to the BHAG. And so for our audience listening, BHAG, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's big, hairy, audacious goals, correct?
Yeah.
So, big, hairy, audacious goals from, is it Chris McChesney? I think the 4 disciplines of execution, I think is when he talks about that particular.
I honestly have no idea.
Okay. Yeah.
Something that's always been, I heard it in college and I haven't, did not know who it came from.
and I could be wrong as well, but BHAG is big, hairy, audacious goals. And sometimes we need to set those BHAGs in order to think beyond our limitations. I love hearing you talk about the global impact in changing the mindsets in a positive way. What you're sharing with me, Ben, is you're modeling what true effective leadership is when you can cast the vision and you can influence your team in a way that they know that they're a part of the mission that's going towards that vision. The 3 questions I ask every client is, where are you going? That's your vision. How are you getting there? That's your mission. And why are you doing it? That's your purpose. And the purpose is not to mow the lawns and do the weed eating and scoop the dog poop and all the things that you guys are doing. It is to truly make a global impact in changing the mindset of people in a positive way. And that is something that people certainly would want to be a part of. Oh, you're telling me that I get to make a global impact in changing mindsets in a positive way? That is the why. That is the purpose. I want to be a part of that mission.
Yeah. And I think it's really important I have a really bad tendency of talking big, like being at 30,000 foot and just talking about the high level stuff, the macro things. I want to point out though the practicality of that. Like I've been doing this for a little while, been in various leadership roles, and I understand the negative impact of always staying in the 30,000 foot view. And it's really important to dip back down and to be ingrained with your team, to be a practitioner of the things that they are a part of, and like what their tasks are, what they're doing. I think it's important for you as a leader to be ingrained with them, to be in the trenches with them. And so I think that there's value to being, quote unquote, the first one in, the last one out. But beyond that, it's just being there with them when they're having a hard time going through and accomplishing whatever task. Don't be on a yacht somewhere else. That was bad, probably maybe not relatable. Don't be on vacation somewhere else, right? Or don't be taking a 2-hour lunch. Be ingrained in the trenches with them. It goes a very long way with your team. And especially, if I cast a vision at 30,000 foot and it's been a month and a half and they're starting to lose steam, you're not going to really re-energize them by continuing to stay in that 30,000 foot. You've really got to find practical ways to be part of the process with them. Yes, you as a leader are responsible. In fact, it's irresponsible for you to not be casting vision. But you have a responsibility to them to cast that vision, but you also have a duty to be ingrained in the process with them, in my opinion.
100%, Ben. I agree with you. At the beginning of this episode, you talked about the importance of connection and what connection means to you. And you just alluded to that just now. What are some other ways that you can connect with your team, and how do you connect with your team at White Pickett?
Yeah. So when I worked in construction, I was a project manager, and we traveled all across the country. We were building stuff, and it was fun for a while. And something that the owner of that company did that I always really appreciated is he would just invite us into his home, and invite our families too for 2-3 times a year, sometimes just once a year. But it meant a lot to us to like bring us into his home, like into his world that was outside of the business. And his wife was super awesome and would make us food, and more than anything would just be super welcoming. And so I've always taken that into account in any place that I've gone to and been in a leadership role. If I have a team, it's important to me that I bring you into my home. It just invites you in. You don't have to come, but at least 3 or 4 times a year, I want to find ways to bring my team in and to share a meal together that's super intentional. Maybe it's just going to Dave and Buster's and spending 2 hours playing video games with your team, or maybe it's, hey, let's share a meal together at my house. I think that is a one way to be connected, but I think there's a dichotomy between doing those big things and just a lot of the little things. In my opinion, a lot of the little things have more of an impact than the infrequent big things, because it's more personal.
Yeah.
And I think you just naturally build up more trust with a lot of the little things. So a lot of the little things, I think, could actually come from just spending time being in the trenches with your team.
Could not agree more, Ben. I think a lot of the little things often are met with intentionality, and I think intentionality for anyone goes such a long way. And that's why, in our mind, it might be a little thing, but it could make a significant impact in the mindset of the individual that you're leading or working with. So I really appreciate you sharing really just the importance of connection. And I really appreciate you and why connection is so important to you. That's why I wanted to have you on the podcast as well, because you're not someone who is focused on necessarily the transaction. It's about the relationship first. It's about really getting to be able to serve people. I mean, you mentioned, you don't like talking about yourself, and it's really about serving others. But on the podcast that you're the guest on, I'm going to ask you to talk about yourself. And so I do thank you for being on the episode. Ben, if I were going to ask you, because we really haven't gotten into what White Pickett does. So let me ask you, if I'm a listening audience member right now, and I want to know more about White Pickett and how you can help me, what would you say to that?
So there's the reactive way and the proactive way that you can learn more. So the reactive way is you can go to whitepicketteam.com and you can read a little bit about the services that we offer. I would way prefer, though, that you reach out to me personally and let's hop on a phone call, spend 5-30 minutes chatting about your business. And I'd love to share more about what we do. So White Picket Team is a business management and consulting firm. We specialize in the home services industry. So that ranges from lawn and landscaping businesses, pest control businesses, cleaning businesses, pet waste removal businesses, things of that nature, plumbing. Or skilled trades is what I meant to say, those types of businesses. And so the things that we do, on the macro level, which is where I love to be, is again, we're trying to, or excuse me, we want to be partners with these entrepreneurs, these business owners and their teams, because the deep bench of talent that we have, we can hit a lot of different areas that are important to a business to elevate it. So whether that's your intent is to increase your revenue goals or increase your client count or your team member count, or you want to get efficient and reduce your COGS, or you want to get your books in order, or you want to start getting more leads, so on and so forth. We do all of those things for our clients. But it's important that we're focusing on being ingrained with those leaders, because we can come in and we can start putting in some goals and getting more efficient and achieving those things that you want to achieve. But the goal, in my opinion, when it comes to the consulting side of our business, I don't want you to need us forever. I think we're not doing our jobs well if you continue to have to need us for decades to come. I think it is important for our perspective to come in and to be teachers alongside. We want you to be able to manage these things on going forward. Now, there's different levels to that. Maybe you just want us to come in as basically a contractor and do these services for you, and we do a good job, and you don't want to mess with it. That's one thing. But when we're talking about consulting with someone, we want to be a part of we want to be educating those that we're working with so that they can manage these things on their own and be teachers themselves to other people down the line. So that's kind of the end all be all goal in the consulting side of the business. And again, that's through PR and media. That's through leadership development. That is through HR consulting and insurance, the really boring stuff that I know nothing about, but my team does, and they can talk about it and help businesses out. And accounting and bookkeeping. Those are the types of services that we offer. But again, the intent is to be a partner with this business and help them grow in the ways that they want to grow.
Very good, Ben. And so you mentioned go to whitepicketteam.com that's the reactive way. Now the proactive way is to reach out to you. How can our audience get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can give me a phone call, 972-989-9543. I'll give Josh this information. He can publish it. My email as well. You can hit me up on social media too. LinkedIn has been Gonzalez 90, I think. And you can fly a pigeon to my house and send me a message, come knock on my door, or whatever we need to get in touch with each other.
Well, Ben Gonzalez, man, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Hopefully this is not your last time on the podcast. You mentioned EJ McCoy earlier. We're going to have him on later this year. So, man, thanks for joining us. I will ask you one final question, Ben. I'm putting you on the spot. But if I were to ask you the one piece of leadership advice you would give to anyone listening, what would that be?
Oh, gosh, Josh, why would you do that? Man, this has actually been on my mind recently. And I don't know how well it necessarily plays specifically into leadership, but I just think it, in our society right now, in our culture right now, it's something to focus on, that the things that you want in your life are undoubtedly on the far side of hard work. And hard work looks a little bit different than for everyone. But if you have the perspective of output, like how can you increase your output, not the number of hours you work a day, not the number of emails that you send per day, it's the output that you are producing. How can you increase that? As a perspective as a leader, I think is helpful to have right now. But in addition to that, the things that you want in your life are on the far side of hard work. Those are two very different things. This is why I hate being put on the spot. But those two things have just been on my mind lately.
Man, I think you crushed it. I think for a lot of us, opportunities are simply disguised as hard work. And to your point earlier, the ones who are going to be successful are the ones who keep on going. And it just requires a lot of hard work to do that.
Yeah, and undoubtedly nothing happens overnight. If you go and look at you'll look at a lot of the most influential business owners in the world. One of the common things you'll see is that, generally speaking, nothing happened overnight. They cooked for a long time, like decades, before they saw the success that they were, had in their mind of what they defined as success actually come to fruition. But I think that they focused on being patient, increasing their output, and just understanding that it's going to take work and hard work to get to that point. The competition is so high right now, and we just talked offline about this with social media. The globalization that we have in the world right now, because of it rather, the competition is extremely high for most things that you're trying to accomplish. But again, how can you outlast? How can you increase your output? Be patient and know that everything you want is on the far side of hard work.
So good. Thank you for the reminder, Ben. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for tuning in to the Josh Parnell Leadership Podcast. Have a great day, everyone. Don't forget to smile today. Tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. I'm Josh Parnell, reminding you to keep leading well.